The highway blurred past as I flew down it, pushing my silver '08 Mustang GT well over the limit, because honestly, speed was one of the last things that still gave me a thrill. Then came the chirp, not from the car, I knew every sound this engine made, but from my phone lighting up in the cup holder. My ex-wife's face lit the screen. X, as in finalized, just 3 days ago. X, as in I wouldn't cross the street to spit on her if she were on fire. The call stopped, then rang again seconds later. With a frustrated sigh, I slowed down to 80 and picked up. "What the heck do you want, Carla?" "You already got half my cash in the house," she replied calmly. "I'm at the ER. Craig hit me. I need a place to stay." Craig, the guy she cheated on me with who torched our 8-year marriage. I snapped. "You chose Craig. His charm, his Johnson, whatever. Why are you calling me now?" She launched into her old excuse. "It was just closeness. I got curious after almost 10 years of monogamy. The first time sucked, but I gave him a second shot. You caught us and threw me out without letting me explain." "Explain? You moved him into my house the second your lawyer let you stay there." "I didn't want to be alone," she cried. "I've never lived by myself. Craig's friends trashed the place, there's no food, and I was hoping you could send next month's alimony early." "Absolutely not. You already drained $65K from my savings. No way you burned through that in 10 days. Well, Craig bought a custom motorcycle. I thought maybe we'd take trips like you and I used to, but he crashed it. Now I'm $8,000 in debt. The cops won't help. My parents and friends treat me like garbage. I just want you back. You're the only one I ever loved. Craig was a mistake." "Carla," I said dryly, "you're breaking up. Tunnel. Can't hear you." I hung up and laughed for the first time in weeks. Felt like I'd finally let something go. After a few minutes of laughing so hard I nearly drifted into oncoming traffic, I finally exited the freeway. I eased the Mustang down to a calm 30 miles per hour through the city's streets. That car already drew too much attention from cops, and with the supercharger and a not-so-legal X-pipe underneath, I'd had more than one close call. Somehow, insurance companies always seem to know when you'd added something risky, like they hired fortune tellers. I pulled up to a massive office building, stepped inside, and asked the security desk for directions. My first meeting with Stephen Atherton had been at my place, but now he wanted to meet here. The guard pointed me toward the elevators. I stepped into one, hit the button for the 7th floor, and just as the doors began to close, a voice called out, "Hold the elevator." I stuck my arm out to stop the doors, and then everything slowed down. First came a small, perfectly pedicured foot in red polish, the exact shade of my Mustang's interior. A sign? Maybe. The foot led to a shapely leg, then a thigh, partially hidden by a business skirt that ended just above the knees. Then came full hips, a soft stomach, and curves that demanded attention. She wore a tailored suit that somehow made professional look like fantasy. Her skin was sun-kissed and lightly freckled, her lips full and red, and her hair fell in dark waves around a striking face. Not classic beauty, but absolutely magnetic. And she caught me staring. "Did I pass the inspection?" she asked, clearly amused. I stumbled over my words, blushing. "Sorry, you're just gorgeous." "For a fat girl?" she teased. "No, I meant just gorgeous, period. And you're definitely not fat." She smiled, seeming genuinely flattered. The elevator stopped on the 7th floor, and we both got off, thankfully heading in opposite directions. Still, I couldn't resist watching her walk away. She turned back just in time to catch me looking again. Busted. I waved and turned toward Atherton's office. His secretary, a stiff older woman with all the warmth of a tax audit, gestured to a chair. She called Atherton's office, then informed me, in a voice that sounded like she gargled gravel, that he'd see me now. Her attempt at a smile was so brief and unnatural it felt more like a glitch than a greeting. Atherton greeted me like an old friend, standing up with a wide smile and shaking my hand as if I were rescuing him from his miserable secretary. "Mike Danson," he said, repeating my name like he needed to remind himself. "Want coffee? Water?" I declined. "Let's just get to the point. What did you find out?" He leaned forward, clearly excited. "As you guessed, it's a valuable piece. You'd make good money at a Magnum show or a collector's fair, but there's a chance to make even more if you're open to other options." I could tell he was watching me closely, adjusting his pitch depending on my reaction. I didn't know whether he was working for my benefit or his own, but I wanted to hear everything before making a move. "I'm listening," I said. "We'll need to wait for—" he started, then stopped as his intercom buzzed. "Your other client is here," screeched the secretary through the speaker. I had no idea how he tolerated her voice daily. "Send her in," he said, and the door opened. I stared, actually gawked as the woman from the elevator walked in, calm as ever, with that same playful smirk on her lips. She sat beside me, shook Atherton's hand, then turned toward me. "Mike, meet Miss Samantha Chavaria," Atherton said formally. "We've met," I said, offering my hand. She took it gently, and I found myself wondering how someone could have skin that soft, and if the rest of her was just as warm. She must have noticed my lingering hold. "You can let go now," she teased. "Sorry," I muttered, at least relieved I hadn't been caught staring at her chest this time. Atherton cleared his throat and got down to business. "Mike, the colt you brought in has generated serious interest. Samantha here represents one of those parties. She's holding off on her offer until you've heard everything." My ears perked up. With half my assets gone to a cheating ex and a mortgage I barely wanted to keep, a big payday sounded like salvation. "One of the tools, the ivory grip 1874 Schofield, belonged to your great-great-grandfather, a former sheriff in Texas. It could fetch $40,000 to $50,000. Not bad, not life-changing, but solid. But the other colt, the one with ebony grips, belonged to your great-great-granduncle Smiling Jack Danson, an outlaw turned sheriff. Because of their shared history and rarity as a matched pair, collectors might pay up to $200,000. My jaw nearly dropped. There's risk, of course," he continued. "But if we hold off for next month's high-profile auction, a bidding war could earn you much more." Atherton was clearly trying to convince me. Whether for my wallet or his cut, I couldn't say. He paused. "How much do you know about your family's history?" "Honestly, almost nothing." "Well," he said, glancing at Samantha, "here's the twist. Miss Chavaria and one other partner we haven't met yet share distant bloodlines with you. Think of this as a small family syndicate." We both blinked in surprise. "Technically, we're all related if you go back far enough," he shrugged. "We've got time before dinner to dive into the story. We'll continue it later." He pulled out 3 weathered leather-bound books, remarkably intact despite their age. "I've bookmarked key passages," he said. "They'll give you the full story without all the confusion. Let's begin." And with that, he opened the first book and started to read. Excerpt from Samuel Danson's journal. "May 4th, 1875. Rolled into Navarro, Texas this morning, hungry, exhausted, and unsure how long I'll stay. The town seems decent, but it doesn't feel like home. A run-in in the town square didn't help matters. Locals mistook me for my brother Jack. His outlaw reputation apparently made it here ahead of me. Some even looked scared. The sheriff himself tried to arrest me until I showed him a letter from the U.S. Marshal, co-signed by a judge, confirming that Jack and I are twins, and that I've never stolen a thing in my life. I'm not sure he bought it, but he let me go, as long as I kept my nose clean while I'm in town. Nice scenery, quiet area. But with Jack's name floating around, this isn't the fresh start I'd hoped for. Jobs are scarce too. Unless I want to sling drinks at the saloon or entertain in the brothel, I don't. I'll probably ride out tomorrow. May 6th, 1875. Looks like I'm staying. Yesterday, I stepped outside my boarding house and saw the sheriff facing down a group of rough-looking men. One tried to distract him, while another crept behind him, reaching for a magnum. The sheriff fired at the one in front, but the guy behind was ready to hit him from behind. I had no choice. I drew and hit the man's hand with a shot before he could pull the trigger. He'll live, though that hand won't be much use anymore. I hated doing it, but it was either him or the sheriff. That's where Jack and I differ. He wouldn't hesitate to hurt someone if it suited him. I still can't. I expected trouble for firing a magnum in town, but instead, folks treated me like a hero. Even the sheriff thanked me. When I offered to give up my tool, he just shook his head and said I'd saved his life, and then asked if I'd become his deputy. I accepted. The badge is shiny, the pay is modest, but it's enough to stay a while and maybe save up for a ranch of my own someday. June 6th, 1875. Nothing much to report lately. Most days, I haul drunks out of the saloon, toss them in a cell, and collect their fines the next morning. Some are regulars, using jail like cheap lodging. Something new. One of the women at the boarding house seems interested in me. A beautiful Mexican woman with long dark hair and warm brown eyes. I might feel something too, but after everything with Arabella, I'm hesitant. That said, I haven't thought about Arabella in weeks. Maybe I really am moving on. June 16th, 1875. Everything's different now. Part of my job includes greeting newcomers off the stage. Today, one of them was Miss Constance Farmwell, the new school teacher. She's 22, tall and slender, with blonde hair and blue eyes, the kind of woman you imagine marrying. She also happens to look exactly like Arabella. I carried her bags, showed her around, helped her get settled, far more than I usually do for any newcomer, but she barely noticed me. Couldn't remember my name, bumped into me more than once. Maybe love just isn't in the cards. But I'll admit, for the first time in a long while, I'm starting to feel something again.
Constance Farmwell's diary, June 16th, 1875. I arrived in Navarro, Texas this morning to start over. Leaving the East was necessary after my family's reputation was ruined, thanks to my father and brother's drinking and gambling. When my father lost our home in a card game, I had no choice but to go elsewhere. A kind priest back home referred me to Father Thompson here, who's trying to build a school as this little town grows into something more. With no real prospects left behind, this feels like my best shot. At the station, we were greeted by a tall, handsome deputy named Sam Danson. The moment he looked at me, my heart skipped. He has steel-grey eyes and a quiet strength that's hard to ignore. I kept him nearby longer than necessary, feigning confusion just to spend more time with him. Society doesn't let women be direct, so we play our silly games. Still, I think he noticed. Not everyone was pleased to see me around him, especially a dark-haired woman from the boarding house. She looked ready to claw my eyes out. But Sam's not married, and if I have any say, he might not stay single for long. I wonder how much a deputy earns. June 18th. I've moved into a room at the church, thank heavens. I couldn't stand that boarding house a minute longer. From day one, the staff were rude, especially one woman who clearly had it out for me. On my first day, after a brutal stagecoach ride, I needed a bath. They complained the whole time while setting it up. But when I stepped in, the water was ice cold and smelled like old fish. I jumped out furious, and at that exact moment, the door swung open. A group of gamblers happened to be walking past and got a full view of me, completely undressed. Their laughter still echoes in my ears. It took hours to get fresh water to clean off. Since then, everything at that house went wrong. Here at the church, things are already better. I feel like I can finally breathe. June 19th. Tragedy struck today. With no proper bank in town yet, folks had been storing their savings in deposit boxes at the saloon. Construction on a real bank and post office only just began last week. A gang must have wanted the money before it was locked away. They tried to rob the saloon. 5 armed men. The sheriff and Deputy Sam responded. None of the outlaws made it out alive, but the sheriff lost his life. They say he served longer than most, almost 10 months. Within minutes, Sam was unanimously elected as the new sheriff. His first duty was to bury the man who trained him. I'm proud of him, but terrified too. He's brave, kind, and everything a man should be. But I need to convince him to change careers. He reads that law book constantly. Maybe he could be a lawyer instead of risking his life. And then there's her. That woman from the boarding house wasted no time. Practically threw herself at Sam after the shootout, her chest plastered against him. I've tried to be subtle, but it's getting me nowhere. The whole town's after him now. With no mayor, the sheriff is the most powerful man here, second only to the priest. If I want a future with Sam Danson, I may have to act boldly. The clock's ticking, and the competition is circling like vultures.
Samuel Danson's journal, April 4th, 1876. It's been nearly a year since I last wrote. Life's been too fast to sit still. Becoming sheriff changed everything. I've got 3 deputies now, all cousins of Maria Chavarria, the woman who used to clean rooms at the boarding house and now runs the jailhouse like clockwork. No one else wanted the badge after my predecessor was wounded, but somehow Maria convinced her family to step in. Some townsfolk weren't thrilled about it, racial tensions being what they are, but safety won out. And in just a few weeks, I'm getting married. A year ago, I was heartbroken over Arabella. Now, I'm engaged to Constance Farmwell, and I honestly don't know how it happened so fast. But I do know this. I love her more than I ever loved Arabella. May 15th. I thought the wedding would be the highlight of my life. The town gave us a house and 100 acres. Decent land, too, left unclaimed after the previous owner passed. I'll hire some hands soon and raise cattle once I retire. For now, Constance will live there, and I'll stay near town for work. But the real surprise wasn't the wedding. It was the wedding night. Turns out my wife is full of passion and more adventurous than I ever imagined. She may have entered our bed a maid, but by morning, she had me worn out and grinning. Also got a letter from Arabella. She wanted me back now that I'm doing well. Her family suddenly forgot about my outlaw twin brother and wanted a reunion. Too late. I happily sent back a short, sharp reply. I'm married now. Goodbye and good riddance. July 8th. Constance is pregnant. I keep repeating it, but it still doesn't feel real. I'm going to be a father. Every time I see her growing belly, my heart gets fuller. Life finally feels like it's heading somewhere good. August 12th. Grateful to be alive after the week we've had. Rumors had been swirling for days about a gang tearing up the territory. I ordered locals to sleep in town and sent scouts to get intel. We hadn't even confirmed their numbers when they hit us. 6 outlaws rode straight into town, bold as heck, and robbed the bank. I caught them mid-ride. No urgency in their escape. The leader was on a flashy Arabian stallion. Too pretty to live, I decided. I stepped out, fired my rifle, and dropped the horse, causing a pileup. Then I pulled my Colt and dropped the riders beside him. The leader struggled to stand. He didn't get far. One precise hit brought it to an end. The rest drew their magnums, and more outlaws flooded into town, dragging 2 of my deputies behind them like trophies. I stared down 3 barrels and thought, this is it. I'd never see my child born. Then came a voice from behind the gang. Shooting the lawman isn't smart, Bart. I'd drop you before his body hit the dirt. We came here to stir trouble, not start a war. Put the money back. The moment changed everything. I still don't know who that man was, but he bought me a second chance, and I intend to make it count. September 6th, 1876. I should really write more, but the days fly by lately. Things have calmed down in town, though folks still aren't quite used to having Jack and his outlaw crew hanging around like part-time citizens. Truth is, it's been good having my brother close again after all these years. He keeps his men in check within town limits, and they've actually proven useful more than once. A few weeks back, word came that a group of rowdy cowboys were riding through towns, leaving destruction behind. Fresh off a cattle drive and full of money, they tore up saloons, started fights, and worse. 25 of them were headed our way, and my 3 deputies and I couldn't stop a crowd that size alone, not before they wrecked the place. The Rangers would have taken too long to arrive, as usual, so we rode out half a mile from town to meet them. When they pulled up, I told them this was a peaceful place. Family-run, small, and not built to handle chaos. If they wanted to visit, they'd have to hand over their tools at the edge of town and follow a few simple rules. At first, they listened, but one big cowboy stepped forward and sneered. What if I don't give up my magnum? What if I want to get drunk, raise hell, and screw every hoe in town right in the street? He said, puffing a cigar. What then, Sheriff? I didn't wait. Drew my Colt and blasted the cigar right out of his mouth. No smoking around kids either, I said flatly. He didn't back down. Maybe you're fast, Sheriff, but you're outnumbered. Your deputies look like they'd run if things got loud. We could trash this town, toss you a few coins on the way out, and call it even. I looked him dead in the eye. That what you did in Pritchville 2 days ago? Heard your boys beat up locals, destroyed property, and assaulted women who weren't even working girls. If that's what you're bringing, you're not welcome. You follow my rules, or you don't come in at all. A few months earlier, Jack showed up unexpectedly in town leading his gang. But what threw me wasn't just the timing, it was the fact that he hadn't changed one bit. He walked right up to me after defusing a tense standoff in the street, pulling his bandana down to reveal the same face I see in the mirror every morning. Before I could speak, someone yelled, "Sheriff, your wife's coming." We ducked into the saloon and swapped hats, his black one for my white Stetson. I pulled it low over my face and sat across from him. Seconds later, Constance burst in, beautiful and very pregnant, clearly panicked. Forgetting her usual distaste for saloons, she rushed to Jack, mistaking him for me, and kissed him full on the lips. "I'm so glad you're okay," she said breathlessly. "Wait until I show you how glad tonight." Still hidden under Jack's hat, I couldn't resist. "Won't your husband mind?" "This is my husband," she snapped, then paused. Something clicked. She looked again, pulled off Jack's hat, and stared. "Who are you?" Jack and I both burst out laughing. Constance, unsurprisingly, did not find it funny. Life's been full of surprises lately. Some good, some dangerous. But I've got a steady hand on the badge, a child on the way, and my brother, outlaw or not, watching my back. That counts for something out here. Late fall 1876. "Once again, Sheriff," the cowboy barked, "you don't have near enough men to stop us from tearing through your little town." He didn't get to finish. The sound of hooves cut through the tension. Jack and his crew rolled in behind us, cool as ever. "Sorry I'm late," Jack said, grinning. "Did I miss anything?" "Who the hell are you?" the cowboy demanded. "That's Jack Danson," someone muttered. "I've seen his wanted poster." Jack rode right up, pulled out a cigar, and handed it to the loudmouth. Got a light? The man lit it. Jack puffed, then gestured at me. You were saying something to my brother? The cowboy stiffened. Even with his sunburnt skin, I could see the color drain from his face when he realized we were twins. He was just explaining how his 25 men outnumber my 3 deputies and me, I said. Jack chuckled. Well, my boys aren't choir boys, but they know how to fight. So do I. My brother's slower than me, but he hits what he aims at. Let's see. That's 15 of my men, 3 of his, and us. So 20 against 25. Not great odds, for you. The cowboys exchanged nervous glances. They could feel the shift. Of course, I added, we might lose a few. But you'll lose all of yours, Jack said, finishing my sentence like we used to as kids. The cowboy held up his hands. No need for violence. We'll ride on. And just like that, they turned and left. Jack and his men ended up settling in town for a while. There were a few scuffles, but nothing serious. When lines were crossed, they paid fines or spent the night in a cell like anyone else. Things stayed peaceful, at least until a few months after my son was born.
Constance Danson's diary. March 14th. I can hardly believe how much my life has changed. Since marrying Sam, all I've wanted is to be a wife and mother. And now I'm both. We named our son John Jack after Sam's father and brother. But ever since the later months of my pregnancy, I've had urges. Strong ones. Most nights I could barely wait for Sam to walk through the door before dragging him to bed. It hasn't stopped since giving birth. If anything, it's gotten worse. April 3rd. Things have only intensified. As soon as I get the baby to sleep, I want Sam again. Last night we barely slept. I know he needs rest for his work, but I can't seem to get enough of him. I was raised to be modest and God-fearing, and I blame Sam for waking something in me I didn't know existed. I feel guilty and insatiable. April 9th. Today I nearly made a terrible mistake. Jack stopped by looking for Sam. I answered the door in just my shift, not thinking. He stared, clearly affected, and I didn't look away. I smiled. He stepped toward me, and for a moment I was ready for him. But then he stopped, told me to get a grip, and to stop acting like a hoe. He was right. I love Sam deeply, but if it had been anyone else, I don't know what I would have done. May 2nd. I crossed a line I can't uncross. A stranger came by the ranch while I was bathing. Tall, rough, the kind of man who didn't ask permission. Said he was looking for Jack, probably another outlaw chasing reputation or revenge. I should have told him to leave, but I didn't. I invited him in. I hate what I did. I hate him. I hate myself more. And now, I don't know what comes next. He wasn't like Sam, or even Jack. A little heavy, plain-looking, and completely clueless in bed. He fumbled, slapped, and grunted his way through the act while I stared at the ceiling. Not a single moment of pleasure. Honestly, I could have done better alone. Afterward, I had to hide the bruises and pretend to be sore from our own lovemaking when Sam came home. I couldn't let him see the marks. That man, Cletus, showed up again the next day as soon as Sam left for town. I told him to leave, but he smirked and threatened to tell Sam everything, unless I gave in. I'd never heard the term he used before, but I understood the threat. I made him promise not to hurt me again, and gave him what he wanted. It didn't stop there. The next day, he returned with another man, then another. Within days, there were groups, 3, sometimes 4, coming to the ranch taking turns. I later found out Cletus had been charging them. I felt trapped and humiliated. Then fate intervened. Jack ran into Cletus in town. They argued. It escalated fast. Next thing, rounds were flying. Jack didn't land a direct hit, but it was close. Cletus died a few hours later, and I thought maybe it was over. I swore I'd never stray again. But a week later, the desire returned. I resisted as best I could. And then, at the general store, one of the men from Cletus's group recognized me. From that point on, the visitors didn't stop. Men came nearly every day, and some refused to leave when Sam was due home. Word had spread. The worst part? They said I'd do things no local working girl would, and for free.
Back in Atherton's office. Atherton abruptly stopped reading when the intercom buzzed. Samantha and I both flinched. We'd been so drawn into the story, we'd forgotten we were in an office. Miss Peyton from the auction house is here, barked Atherton's icy secretary. Send her in, Atherton said, quickly straightening his tie and brushing off his shirt. A moment later, in walked a tall, stunning blonde. Diana Peyton looked like she'd stepped off the cover of a men's magazine. Glowing smile, long legs, designer everything. Atherton practically drooled. He looked ready to roll over if she asked him to. I wouldn't have blamed her if she patted his head and said, "Good boy." I had a few places in mind she could pat on me too, but I wasn't going to crawl for it. Samantha cleared her throat sharply, shooting a glare. At Atherton, me, or both of us. Atherton snapped out of it. Apologies. May I introduce Miss Diana Peyton from Waterhouse Western Memorabilia Auctions. She's confident we could fetch a significantly higher price if we list both Mr. Danson's firearms and Miss Chavaria's diaries as a matched historical set. She's proposing a featured listing on their website and a preview event to build buzz. She's also related to Constance Farmwell, he added. Peyton offered a polite nod to Samantha, then turned her full attention on me. Her smile was dazzling and unnerving. Despite her beauty, something about her reminded me of a snake. Polished, elegant, and cold. Her smile was too wide, too perfect, like she had more than a full set of teeth. She even looked a little like my ex-wife. It's getting late, she said, her gaze fixed on me. I'd love to take you all to dinner so we can go over my proposal in more detail. Then she glanced at Samantha. Of course, I meant everyone. We climbed into her enormous BMW. Plush, smooth, and eerily quiet. It felt more like a rolling living room than a car. But the comfort made me uneasy. I missed feeling the road beneath me. She guided Atherton and Samantha into the back seat and shut the door before I could follow. Instead, I was left up front with her. Midway through the drive, she pulled a high school move, resting her hand on the gear shifter, then casually dropping it onto mine. She gave me a knowing smile. I gave her one back, then yawned and used the same hand to cover my mouth. Game recognized game. Somehow, Atherton ended up seated beside Samantha and I got stuck next to Miss Peyton. Again. To top it off, I was facing Atherton directly, and the glare he was throwing my way could have burned through glass. He looked like I'd stolen his date. Samantha didn't seem thrilled either. Miss Peyton, though, she was glowing, smiling like a lioness who'd cornered her prey. As we ate, she laid out her pitch. She'd start promoting the auction items immediately. Photos, a feature article in collector newsletters, online campaigns. With the buzz she planned to generate, she was confident we'd attract serious bidders and make top dollar. It all sounded good, except her foot was pressed firmly against my leg under the table, and not in a subtle way. I tried to shift away, but space was tight. Meanwhile, my body started responding like a traitor. Then Samantha dropped her fork and leaned down to retrieve it, right as Miss Peyton's leg made another deliberate move. When Samantha sat back up, she shot daggers at me. "Miss Peyton?" She just smiled, completely unfazed. Right then, my phone rang. Carla's face lit the screen. "What?" I answered flatly. "You didn't call me back," she whined. Click. I hung up before she could finish. Oddly enough, that call snapped me out of it. I suddenly wanted nothing more than to get Miss Peyton's foot off me. I spotted a small band playing soft jazz across the room and used it as an excuse. "I need to hit the men's room," I said. Atherton winced at the phrase. Samantha smirked. Peyton looked mildly disappointed. As I slid out of the booth, she ran her hand across my back, not a casual touch. It felt like she was sizing me up like livestock. A little too familiar. In the restroom, I cooled off, literally and figuratively, and tried to make sense of the whole situation. Peyton clearly wanted the items for her auction, and maybe more than that. Atherton seemed fixated on both the money and Peyton herself. His vibe was pure resentment. Samantha was the mystery. What did she want? When I returned to the table, I had an idea. "Wow, I feel like dancing," I said. Peyton perked up immediately. "I love to dance." Before she could stand, I turned to Samantha. "Would you?" "I'm not much of a dancer," she said softly. "Perfect," I smiled. And before Peyton could wedge herself in, I added, "Atherton, you should dance with Miss Peyton." Atherton nearly launched out of his seat. He grabbed her hand and whisked her toward the small dance floor. I took Samantha's and led her in the opposite direction, to a quiet deck behind the restaurant, bathed in moonlight. "So," I asked gently, "why haven't you been enjoying yourself?" Samantha exhaled. "Because she's tried to exclude me all night. I don't think she respects what I brought to the table. She just wants a payday. No heart in it, just business." "And what's your plan?" I asked. "You haven't said much yet." "I was waiting until you finished reading everything. Once you know the full history, what our families went through, then you'll understand. I want you to choose with all the facts, not just based on hype or pressure. She was the only one who wasn't pushing me, and that meant something. Was it strategy, or was she actually trying to let me decide freely? Would you like to dance anyway? I asked. She nodded, and I gently pulled her into a slow sway beneath the stars. The music was distant, but the setting more than made up for it. Her eyes met mine, steady and deep. I think, she whispered. I understand how she felt. She who? I asked, confused by her comment. You'll understand soon enough, Samantha whispered, resting her head against my shoulder. It felt surprisingly natural. I pulled her closer, her presence, her warmth, it just fit. I looked into her deep brown eyes and thought, I could get used to waking up next to this woman. So, are you seeing anyone? I asked, instantly regretting how cliché it sounded. She shook her head. Nope, I'm what some guys call a practice girl. A what now? She gave a sad little smile. You know, guys date me to try out their lines and tricks before settling down with someone like Miss Peyton. I'm pretty enough to be seen with, but not skinny or polished enough to be the real thing. They think I'm an easy win. When I'm not, they move on. I nodded, letting her words sink in. Well, are you accepting new applicants? That got a real smile from her. We leaned in a little closer, magnetic, inevitable. I was thinking about how her lips might taste when, There you are, Miss Peyton's sharp voice cut through the moment. Stevie said you'd all meet at his office tomorrow to finalize everything after the diaries are done. I'll drive you back, or anywhere else you'd like to go. She stared right at me. Samantha noticed. Back at Atherton's office, Miss Peyton pulled into the parking lot. You can let me out by that blue car, Samantha said, pointing. I jumped out with her. Oh, wow, I said, circling the vehicle. She's a beauty. So am I, Samantha replied, grinning. 09 Mustang, midnight blue, pony package, chrome, bullet rims, I rattled off. It's a filly, V6, no GT badge, single exhaust. Still a Mustang, though. How'd you know it was in 09? She asked. Easy. It's an S197 model, retro styling from 2005 to 2009. Yours has the straight headlight housing. Newer ones from 2010 onward have slanted lights and a weird lower trim. Also, you've got the 45th anniversary badge. What about my BMW? Miss Peyton chimed in. You like fast cars. You can drive mine. No offense, I said, but I've never been into luxury sedans. Smooth ride, sure, but they're built for guys trading in their youth, not horsepower. Her shoulders dipped, but she rallied quickly, as always. Maybe you'd like to swing by my hotel later, she added coyly. I've got a few display ideas for your magnums. Samantha, just about to pull away, clearly caught the tone, if not my response. The next morning, Atherton's secretary, now practicing something that resembled a smile, waved me into the office. It was less of a greeting and more like someone eating sour candy while trying to act polite. I was the last to arrive. Samantha glanced up and her eyes dimmed when she saw me. I wanted to go sit beside her, ask if something was wrong, but Miss Peyton beat me to it, grabbing my arm. Last night was wonderful, she whispered, guiding me to my seat, conveniently between her and Samantha. Right, where were we? Atherton said, flipping open a thick folder. Ah, found it! And just like that, we returned to the past as he began reading again. Sam Danson's journal, May 4th. Something's off in town and I can't quite put my finger on it. A drifter who'd been hanging around for about a week refused to turn in his Magnum, then publicly challenged me to a duel in the saloon. I couldn't ignore it, not without losing face. I've dealt with troublemakers before, but this one got under my skin. It wasn't just his attitude. It was the nasty things he said. One comment hit too close to home, and I couldn't shake the feeling something was wrong. We stepped outside, and I didn't hesitate. He reached for his tool first, but I was faster. One precise hit finished it. No mess on his face, but the scene behind him, well, people saw enough. Some of the folks who laughed before couldn't even look at me afterward. I know something's happening beneath the surface. I just don't know what.
Constance Danson's diary, May 6th. My life is in pieces. Something horrible happened today. A violation not just of my body, but of my sense of self. It was cruel, degrading, and I felt like nothing more than an object. The worst part? I could hear them talk like I wasn't even human. When Jack burst into the room, it was chaos. In a blur, he took them all down. Somehow I wasn't hit. But as I sat there, numb and covered in the aftermath, Jack stared at me like I was the cause of it all. "You've wrecked Sam," he said, blaming me for everything. For the deaths in town, for the violence spiraling out of control. He mentioned Sam had opened fire on a man yesterday after some insult about me, and today, another man challenged him. But it ended in an ambush. Sam was hit and didn't make it. The weight of his words crushed me. My husband was dead. I collapsed, overcome with guilt and grief, knowing that my mistakes, or even just the rumors about me, had helped set this all in motion, and deep down, I feared I might be pregnant, and unsure who the father was. Inside Atherton's office, I jumped up from my chair. "That's complete nonsense!" I shouted so loud the uptight secretary popped her head in, glaring like I'd kicked her dog. "My great-great-grandfather didn't die like that," I snapped. He passed peacefully in bed at 75. Samantha gave me the same amused smirk she had when she caught me checking her out the first time. I smiled back. It was worth the embarrassment just to see her grin. But the moment vanished when Miss Peyton reached over to pat my arm. I had no clue why she kept acting like we were close. I jerked away like her touch burned. Samantha caught the move and grinned again. "Shall I go on?" Atherton asked dryly.
Sam Danson's journal, May 6th. Tonight I sit alone, broken-hearted. I keep asking myself what I did wrong, why everything is falling apart. Today was the worst day of my life. An innocent man died, and I still can't make sense of how things unraveled like this. This morning I tried to shake off yesterday's troubles and focus on something good. There's still so much Constance and I need to talk about, but I love her too much to bring her pain. She looked sad when I kissed her goodbye, like she didn't want me to leave. But she always says that. If I'd known it might be the last time I saw her smile, I never would have gone. I rode into town like usual, but the mood was different. Tense. It felt like yesterday's fight was just the beginning. People avoided my gaze or looked ready for a brawl. Only Maria, the kind-hearted young woman who helps run the sheriff's office, greeted me with warmth. She's sharp, capable. If I hadn't met Constance, I'd probably have married her. My deputies joke that I'm lucky to have a wife at home and one at work. Just past noon, I stepped into the saloon for a drink and a bite. Same crowd, gamblers, drunks, and troublemakers. But the air was off. They were still talking about the standoff. Some said I got lucky, others swore I was the best shot they'd ever seen. A few claimed I meant to shoot him between the eyes and missed. All of it churned my stomach. I didn't feel proud, just ashamed. I could have aimed for his hand, but I let my rage speak for me. One man died because of it. I tried to leave, but trouble wasn't done with me yet. Outside, some big guy shoved me. "You looking to start something?" I asked. "From what I hear, you already did," he growled. "You murdered my brother yesterday because he slept with your cheating wife. If every man she touches ends up dead, Texas will be empty soon." "That's not how it went," I said. "Your brother challenged me. He reached first, and my wife hardly ever comes to town," he sneered. "You let him reach first because you're a pro and he was just some ranch hand. He didn't stand a chance. And your faithful wife? Word is, she doesn't have to come to town. Men come to her. At your place, more than one at a time." I didn't let him finish. My fist hit his jaw hard, and he hit the dirt. "Let's see if you're any tougher than your brother," I told him. He spat, smirking. "Took you long enough. I figured you'd turn your back like your brother does. Or maybe you're just as soft as your wife's reputation." Laughter rippled through the crowd. Every ounce of guilt I'd felt vanished. I was ready to put another man in the ground for Constance. We squared off in the street. It felt like half the county had come to watch. I studied him, but he wasn't looking at me. He kept glancing behind me. I wasn't falling for that old trick. I kept my eyes locked on his, waiting for the slightest move. If he didn't go soon, I was going to end it anyway. I needed to know the truth about Constance. She couldn't be doing what they said. She was home, with our baby boy. Just a blink. That's all it took. My instincts kicked in before I even processed what was happening. I reached for my magnum without thinking. Like his brother, the man was slow. His hand hadn't even touched his holster before my Schofield .44 barked, sending a bullet clean between his eyes, just to silence those doubters claiming I'd gotten lucky the day before. But before his body even crumpled to the ground, I heard something behind me. The cold, unmistakable click of a rifle hammer being cocked. That's when it hit me. He hadn't been staring at nothing. There was someone behind me, and I knew I wouldn't turn fast enough. I was going to die. Then the rifle roared, but I didn't fall. Something small slammed into me, soaking up nearly the entire blast. I felt a sting as a few pellets hit, but otherwise, I was still standing. Jack was already in motion, firing at the man with the rifle until his face was unrecognizable, then grabbing another tool from one of his men and unloading that one too. Jack scanned for more threats, and I wordlessly handed him my Colt. Meanwhile, I was already down on the ground, holding Maria, small, trembling and bleeding in my arms. She was gasping for breath, struggling to stay with me. Choked with tears, I begged her to tell me why. Why would she do something so reckless? Why take a bullet meant for me? No job, no duty was worth that. I loved you, she whispered, since the day you rode into town. Long before that pretty woman you married? I always let... Her voice faded. She died smiling, as if saving me had brought her peace. I don't know how long I stayed there, sobbing into her hair as the street emptied around us. Jack's men and my deputies circled up to keep riders from trampling us. Eventually, the preacher and undertaker coaxed me into letting go. Juan, one of my deputies, and Maria's cousin came over and told me she'd left behind a son. He and his wife would take him in. But I shook my head. You already have a house full of kids. I'll raise him, I told him. He's mine now. You and your wife can visit any time. Someone nearby muttered something ignorant. Just loud enough. But he's Mexican. That ain't right for... I didn't let him finish. I took him down on the spot. And I never once regretted it. I've regretted both conflicts this week. Taking out those brothers wasn't necessary. I let my emotions lead. But that hateful man? That was justice. Thanks to Maria, I slept just fine after that one. There are no Mexicans in this town, I told the crowd. No whites, no blacks, no Chinese, just people. From now on, everyone here is equal. Anybody got a problem with that? Nobody said a word. Maybe they pitied me. Maybe they saw how broken I was. Maybe they knew I'd had enough. I looked for Jack, but he'd vanished. I figured I'd find him later. I had one more task, Maria's funeral. Juan came with me briefly, but got called away. I picked the flowers, paid for her casket, even chose what she'd wear. The preacher looked like he wanted to argue when I asked for the service to be held during Sunday Mass, but one glance at my hand hovering near my holster, and he changed his mind. By the time I left, night had fallen. I rode home, dreading the conversation I knew I had to have with Constance. No more silence between us, no matter how painful the truth might be. But I wasn't prepared for what I found. I opened the front door, and there was Carmen, Juan's wife, rocking my baby boy. Another child stood nearby, maybe 4 years old. He had Maria's eyes. I didn't need to ask who he was. Carmen didn't speak much English, but she handed me a torn page from Constance's journal. I recognized her handwriting instantly. Dearest Sam, there's no easy way to say this. I've broken your trust and failed as a wife and mother. I love you more than life, but something changed in me after our son was born. Something dark I couldn't control. By the time I realized what I'd become, it was too late. I'm going to a convent, hoping to become someone worthy of you again. I release you from your vows. Please find someone who can give you the life I couldn't. Our son deserves a mother, and you deserve peace. Don't hate me. I've always loved you. I still do. I wasn't evil, only weak. Maybe solitude and penance will cleanse my soul. Forever yours, Constance. The paper fell from my hand as I broke down again. I wept for the 2 men I'd ended, men whose cruel words turned out to be true. I wept for the man Jack took out because of Constance's lies. I wept for 2 boys who would grow up without mothers. But more than anything, I cried for Maria, the woman who gave her life for mine without ever asking for a thing in return.
Constance Danson's journal, June 16th. This morning I woke up shackled to a bed. For the first time in weeks, my mind feels clear. It's the first time I've been fully aware since Jack forced me to write that letter to Sam, the one claiming I'd gone off to a convent. Truthfully, I never wanted to be separated from Sam or our child. My plan had been simple. The 3 of us would leave everything behind and start fresh, somewhere new. Now that I've fought off those uncontrollable urges, I'm fine. I've changed. I no longer crave attention or intimacy from anyone but my husband. I thought I was healed, but Jack, ever the overbearing brother, clearly doesn't agree. I have no clue where I've been taken. I was sedated through the entire journey. They dosed my food to keep me compliant. At least it wasn't the bumpy, miserable stagecoach ride I'd feared. June 17th. I was wrong. I'm not in a convent. I'm in a nightmare. They don't chain people to beds in holy places. Jack didn't send me here to be redeemed. This is punishment, a twisted payback for hurting Sam. He sold me to a brothel in Mexico. The men here treat me like a rare novelty. Blonde hair, blue eyes. Yesterday they paraded through my room, one after another, until I blacked out. The madam told me I'd work until she recovers what she paid for me. Only then would I be allowed to leave. This is worse than I ever imagined. I had a good life, a family, a future, and I threw it away for lust.
Atherton closed the journal and looked around the room. I imagine you're wondering how the rest of it played out, he said. Well, it's a bit of an unspoken piece of American history. Samuel became mayor of the town. Jack followed him as sheriff. Constance never made it out of that brothel. She contracted syphilis and died, never seeing her husband or son again. Jack never told Sam the truth, only that she had passed. Let's move on to the actual deal, said Miss Peyton, running her hand down my arm with fake enthusiasm. Let's not, I said firmly, turning to Samantha. I'd rather hear your idea. Samantha looked nervous. She licked her lips before speaking, those same full lips I hadn't stopped thinking about. You've probably figured it out, she said softly. Maria was one of my ancestors. You're descended from the Dansons. Miss Peyton here claims some distant tie to Constance's line. The town they lived in, it was renamed decades ago. It's called Danson, Texas now. They just built a small museum there. I wanted to donate the journals to them. She glanced at Atherton and Peyton. They told me how much the collection's worth. The diaries, the tools, serious money. But this isn't just some collectible. It's history. It's our history. I told them I wasn't going to sell it. The story belongs to the people, not hidden away in some private vault. Samantha stood, looked at me one last time, and walked out the door. The second it clicked shut, Miss Peyton burst into laughter. Can you believe her? Give all that to some little backwater museum? We're talking hundreds of thousands of dollars. But it doesn't matter. She made a huge mistake. Atherton, get the paperwork. She shoved a document at me. A deed or transfer of ownership. My name was already printed at the top. What is this? I asked. She gave them to you, Peyton said, still laughing. No charge. Signed them over. Just handed it all to you like a fool. She kept laughing. Some people just don't deserve wealth. You're right, I replied with a cold smile. Atherton, where are the tools? He opened the wall safe behind his desk and handed me the case. I placed the diaries on top of it, nodded to both of them, and walked to the door. Where do you think you're going? Peyton shrieked. Outside, I saw Samantha's Mustang already pulling out of the parking lot. I jumped into my own car, a supercharged V8 beast, and floored it. Hers was quicker off the line, but I had the edge in power. Still, she had a solid head start, and I had no idea where she was headed. It could have been any exit, any road. Then I saw flashing lights. Cops had pulled her over for speeding. I parked a little ways behind and flagged down one of the officers. He approached, cautious hand resting on his holster. Officer, I said calmly. I'm not here to cause trouble. I just need a word with my girlfriend, after you're done with the ticket. He studied me, then nodded. Talk to her while we run her license. Don't try anything dumb. We've still got her keys. Samantha stared at me through the open window. Girlfriend, she asked, raising an eyebrow. Wishful thinking, I said with a grin. She shook her head. After that cozy night with Peyton, I figured there was no cozy night. I went home, alone. Whatever Peyton was trying to sell, I wasn't buying, and I sure as heck wasn't sleeping with her. Now tell me, how do we get to your museum? She hesitated. And the money? What about that? Screw the money, I said. I want you. But this isn't how the story goes, she replied. Our ancestors. This isn't how their story ended. No, I said. Their story ended in misery, heartbreak, lies, and pain. I was supposed to fall for the wrong woman, let history repeat itself. But not this time. She nodded. I've done the painful part, I added. We've both been through it. Let's write a better ending. Haven't you had enough practice pretending? Maybe it's time for something real. Another nod. Then finally, we kissed. Her lips were as soft and warm as I'd imagined. We drove to Danson and handed over the collection, journals and magnums, to the town museum. They honored us at Founders Day, gave us the key to the city, and even invited us to ride in the parade. We ended up moving there, got married soon after. Miss Peyton? She'd blown a fortune advertising artifacts she didn't own, got herself fired and tried to sue us. But without a valid contract, she didn't stand a chance. Atherton didn't seem to mind. He married his cranky secretary, who, as rumor has it, turned out to be quite the firecracker in private. As for my ex-wife, Carla, she still calls from time to time. I don't answer.